Hi, I'm Heather Adams with MassLive, and we've been discussing a lot about virtual and remote learning at MassLive, whether it's one of our stories or just talking amongst ourselves. We have a lot of parents at MassLive, and virtual learning is super difficult. It's something that a lot of us have not had to deal with in the past. So we thought we would get some tips and tricks for how to do this. So Delilah is here from College Nannies, Sitters, and Tutors. We've been talking a little bit already about some tips and tricks, but I mean, how are parents supposed to balance working all day, whether they're working from home or working in a building, and balancing now school?
Well, it's interesting because I think as parents, we're already so used to doing the juggling. We're so used to kind of shifting from left to right. But now we've added a whole nother dynamic because you have the responsibility of getting your job done, and then you have the responsibility of helping a child get their job done. So when I talk to parents about ways that we can be effective in supporting the online learning, we always talk about having a designated space for the children. Not necessarily the sofa that they can sprawl out on, but a nice designated space. It's got good lighting. Maybe it has a little station for snacks. It has drinks. And then also allowing them to be aware of their break time and being able to move around fluidly and just maximize the day without it being too painful, because it's really hard for kids to stay engaged all day long online. And parents have to have a little bit of an understanding as to that being quite challenging for them and having some empathy, I think.
And with that, I think comes a little bit of trying to remain calm. So, do you have tips and tricks for parents who maybe just feel really overwhelmed to stay calm so that their kids stay calm?
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of situations, these homes have more than one child. So you're looking at ways you can sync schedules. So if you can align things to make it a little bit more simplistic, that's going to help. We need simplicity in our life. Again, it comes back to having the ability to break and having the ability to designate your schedule out and say, okay, we're going to have block A, block B with school, then we're going to do a break. And the parents taking part in that too. And maybe the parents might benefit from taking a break from the things that they're also doing online, because children are doing online learning, but many parents across the greater Boston area are doing business online as well. So maximizing break time, but also allowing for the schedule to work itself out in the most effective way.
So we talked to you mentioned that it doesn't necessarily should be a couch that things sprawl out on, but what does the space have to look like? Does it have to be some elaborate desk system?
No, it just needs to be an area where someone feels comfortable. There are cases where someone might be more comfortable in what I would call like a therapeutic environment. Maybe it's a giant beanbag that somebody's sitting in and there's not a lot of distraction. The key is to not have distraction. If you have a child that has an online class and they have the iPad 5 feet away from them and they're trying to work on their Chromebook, it's probably not a good thing to have the iPad in proximity. The iPad should be at a charging station, and the iPad can be accessed when there's a break. But space-wise, it should be a space where someone feels comfortable. It needs to be a space with not a lot of distraction, but also a space that you can utilize areas and have things like snacks or water, or the ability to maybe move from this location to that location for a little bit of a change.
And we talked about these taking breaks. So what should a break look like? Is there any special thing that it should include?
I absolutely think a break should include any sort of outdoor activation. Walking around outside for 15 minutes and getting some fresh air, and just even copping a squat and just sitting there and enjoying nature. I think that for anybody that is staring at a screen all day, it does a lot. And sometimes people get headaches from staring at a screen all day. If you go outside and you really have that break and it's such a different environment, it allows you to breathe and just wrap your head around the things that maybe you've learned and then come back and start again. A break would also be good to not have more screen time. I always say that it's nice to take these breaks, maybe create a craft, or maybe we're going to do a quick snack break and we're going to do it together. Or teaching someone, these are the 4 things that you need to be doing to create the snack yourself, and giving them a little bit of independence when it comes to things like that.
And I like this concept of independence, because I think for working parents, this idea that they have to help with school, then they have to help with a break, and it's like, when do I do work? So do you have any other tips for how to create those independent moments?
Definitely schedule, definitely planning. One of the things that we do is we give our nannies a monthly schedule for activities and a weekly schedule for activities, and then the same for meal plan and snack. And this is something that can be replicated at home. For anybody who is watching this today, if they wanted that template, we would send it out. We just send it out to utilize. And when you plan ahead and you make sure that you have the things like the items to create lunch or to create the snack, then you won't necessarily have to step in all of the time and take control. Your middle schooler can, or your high schooler can go ahead and do that on their own. When it comes to elementary education, I think that that's an age where when they're in fourth or fifth grade, of course, they're much more independent and they're learning how to do it themselves. But for kindergarten to probably third grade, there'll still be some support. But for the most part, fourth, fifth, and up, you can, with planning and following schedules and meal plans, they can definitely start to have that on their own without parents always stepping in.
Awesome. And before we continue, just want to let everyone know that if they want to comment their questions below, then we can get those questions answered as well as we continue this conversation. So talking more about, you have to kind of plan differently if you've got little ones versus older ones. So what are some tips first for maybe some of the younger students? Are there any specific tips for them?
When it comes to tips for learning, again, it's elementary age. It's so difficult. Kids in elementary thrive with schedule. It's so important for them to know what is happening and what is happening next. And that's going to make each day successful. But also in that age, they're going to be more inclined to need to kind of get that energy out and to run around. So if you have the ability to go outside with the younger kids and let them play on the swing set or maybe play tag in the yard, not everything has to have a structure. You bring it back to the grassroots, and we're playing tag. We're going to do a 10-minute discovery, and we're going to try and find 5 things in the yard that are yellow. Just any sort of opportunity to take advantage of the things that we have at home, outside, but also implementing the schedule to follow that, definitely for that age.
And staying on that age, what are some tips as it starts getting colder? Some of those outdoor options may not start working as well, or it might take longer to bundle up and get outside and then come back in and unbundle. So are there some inside tips as well?
Well, I always think it's fun to kind of take part in dancing. I think one of the successes I have at my home with my children is we put on music and we just have a little dance party and you dance it out. And maybe during break 1, you dance it out and you prep for all the chocolate chip cookies that you're going to make. And then in break 2, you throw it in the oven and you get all of the milk and the plates ready for the cookies when they come out. But any opportunity to be physical, to get your body moving, is really going to help the day go along a little bit quicker. And also things like music, having music playing, and just it gives a sense of calm too. You're either going to have that moment where you're going to dance it off and have some fun, or maybe it's just a time to really switch off completely. You turn the music on, you have a moment to shut your eyes and have 15 minutes of almost meditation, so you can just separate yourself from all of the things that have bombarded you through the screen.
That sounds like great advice just for myself.
Yeah, absolutely. I should get a little spot in my office for that. I should do it more often.
So what about some of the older kids? Are there specific tips for dealing with middle schoolers or high schoolers?
So middle school, I think the most important thing is they're really starting to get involved with engagement with others. And they care about their peers. And right now, we are in a world where it's predominantly online and they don't get to have that engagement. So allow them to have that opportunity when breaks happen for them to communicate with their friends or their peers or people that they want to socialize with. Because if they don't have that at all, that's something they're really going to long for. And also, if there's an opportunity to get these longer periods at lunchtime, maybe you have local friends that are in close proximity and they can meet outside on the grass for 30 minutes and have lunch together. It's looking at ways to make schedules with other people work in conjunction with your child so you can spend more time effectively enjoying moments, because a lot of moments are really limited right now. For college or for high school students, I would say it's very much the same thing. The high school student is certainly getting very used to running things on their own. They're definitely managing their schedule, managing their time. They still need the engagement piece, but more than anything, they need to have the opportunity to disconnect. There's a lot of pressure making sure these grades are right. And right now, when you take away the in-school component and you've shifted it to all online, you have to be careful that there's not a heavy disconnect. So parents should absolutely be checking in with the high schooler, for as independent as they are, to make sure that they're doing okay and that they still have that social piece, because they'll probably verbalize it less than the middle and the elementary ages.
And what about for parents of really of any age? I know a lot of times when they start helping with just homework, and now you've got normal schoolwork on top of that, parents are like, I'm having to relearn some of the stuff that I've forgotten over the years. So now that they're really, really involved in this, how do you start relearning some of that?
Well, so this is something that we actually found with our nannies and our mannies. They're being asked to become educational nannies. They're going into a home and they're having to facilitate this online learning piece. And it's like me, I was a deer in headlights. I'm trying to figure out how to use Google Classroom and how to work with this schedule and use this Zoom to log in. And it was a steep learning curve in, the second quarter of 2020. Now what we've done is we've incorporated k12.com, and we've given our nannies and our mannies a tool to help them understand how to utilize online and how to make it not so complicated and not something that literally reads like a foreign language. And for any parent that is looking at doing support for their child with an online perspective, K12 is a good resource to look at. It would help them to certainly be able to move around the platforms that we're utilizing a little bit easier.
And I think that there's been a couple, I've talked to other organizations, and there are some online resources. How reliable are some of these?
Online resources, I think it's important to make sure that some of the online resources you're using are really fundamentally about education and really making sure that these are going to be able to support the need of the child, the student. Um, I don't know if I would necessarily go with any. I look for accredited businesses, ones that we know have had successes. That's why we ended up using K12, because it's been around for a very long time. And also teachers and districts use it. And if you're going to do something and you're going to implement something, just make sure that, educators are also using it, because that's a really good sign that it's probably something that's working quite well.
Awesome. So Meredith asked a question here and said, pull it up here. She said, what are some of the best ways to refocus the child who is struggling to sit still and focus?
This is where you definitely need to get their body moving during breaks. And it's okay if you are allowing them to have breaks at the beginning to get used to this new normal. It's going to be really hard for a kid who is bouncing around and wanting to, you think about kindergarten, for example. Kids, when they go into kindergarten, there's a reason why there's so many different stations and they're moving around, and it's not just sitting at a desk. They have to learn how to get their body to do that. And with your child who is really having a hard time, try to be supportive of the classroom setting. But if they're 14 minutes in and they need a break, hop up with them. Let's go get a drink. Let's take a break, and just explain to the teacher that this is what we're going through and this is why we're taking these breaks. And I would imagine that as you go, it can become a little bit longer and a little bit longer. But absolutely get the breaks where you're going outside and you're running around, and get the energy out, because that's really what they need.
And we've heard from a lot of parents really a range of things from, my child isn't being challenged enough to I'm afraid my child is going to fall behind. So how do you make sure that your child stays on track? And what are some things that College Nannies, Sitters, and Tutors offers to help that?
So to keep your kid on track is to be aware of what is being asked of them. And that is, it's time consuming. And this is where it's really hard for the working parent. They are committed to their job, but they're also committed to their child, and you have to balance the two. What does the schedule look like? When you go into Google Classroom, there's going to be little boxes that are going to show you homework that's due, things that need to be completed. Having awareness of that is going to really help. For me and for my daughter, I go in and I have a look at where we're at with tasks and what needs to be completed. And if it's not completed, we need to make sure that we designate time later on for it to be completed. From a business perspective, when we're looking at our nannies and our mannies and how they're going to support these families across the greater Boston area, we are the K-12 component that's been implemented is it's really converting the nanny into a learning coach as well, and getting them to support and help structure the day and structure the homework process. It's really hard for a child or a teenager or a tween to figure this out on their own. I think that we expect a lot from our kids, and if we leave them alone all the time to just figure it out, they can't really just figure it out on their own. Of course, high school, yes, but when they're in elementary and middle, we have to own this process still. And with the college nannies and our nannies and mannies, we're helping to own that process for the parent and supporting the day to day so they can focus on their jobs and we can focus on the kids.
And that kind of leads to my next question, which is hiring a nanny or a tutor is an investment and maybe a new investment for some families. So what are some questions that families should be asking themselves if this is the right move for them?
It is certainly an investment to take on a private nanny. It's a very, very different experience. We have so many families that have shifted out of childcare and into nanny placement. The things that you should be really thinking about when you're bringing on a nanny is how well are they going to fit with your family? And personality matching is certainly very important, but also, is this nanny experienced enough for the role that you have on the table? Because you want it to be a match, but you also don't want somebody to come into a job and fail. We want everybody to thrive. And if the nanny's thriving, the family's thriving, and it's just a very, very happy, harmonious environment. The other thing too is that with a nanny, the parents should allow for this person to come in and let them have a little bit of control when it comes to how the day is going to run. And that is different. It's certainly different when you have somebody in your home and they're there, they are present. And with 90% of our families at home working, you have another adult present in your home and they're supporting your family and they're helping your children. Allow for them to run with it. Trust them in the process, especially if they're coming in and they're going to be a learning coach. Give them the opportunity to be that learning coach for your child and not necessarily step in. And it actually, we've had so many great successes and we have so many families that finally feel like they can breathe a little bit. And that means that we're doing our job.
And what are maybe some things that people are surprised about when they get a nanny, sitter, or tutor?
I think families that work with our office in particular are always surprised at how seamless the process is and how much of it we own. Our nannies are our employees, so we are not a traditional agency in the sense that we are going to find a nanny and place them in your home and disappear. We manage it all. We manage the payroll, the taxes, the workman's compensation. We manage things like the K-12 partnership. We're making sure that they're the educational coach. And so it's kind of like a one-stop shop. And that's what a lot of people don't realize when they start the conversation and when they are our client and they're going through this and they realize, gosh, this is so painless. This is wonderful. That's the point. It's supposed to make this all a little bit easier so everyone can just do the things they need to do.
So we've talked about the virtual, straightforward, but a lot of schools are doing this hybrid where they go in some of the time, but not all the time. So that seems to me a little confusing. How do you manage that?
So hybrid is a model that I'm living in right now. My daughter is doing hybrid, and hybrid is actually really good. It's good in the sense that kids need that social emotional piece. And even though it is very much heavily regulated in the school is doing the best that they can. For us, when it comes to the care that we provide, we're totally transparent with our caregivers that this child will be doing hybrid as well. But what it does mean is that the child will come home and they'll be so happy because they had half of a day actually seeing and engaging with others. And then our nanny or our manny is there to facilitate the second half of the day, which means making sure all of the things that need to be done are going to get done. And then it's either with hybrid, it's either going to be 2 days out of a week or it's going to be every other week that a child's going to attend school. And the time that they're not in school, then our nanny is there to help facilitate it at home and then maximize the breaks. And when school is done, then they just get to go and have some fun and hang out and enjoy each other.
So that's really interesting to me, because to me, obviously I'm not in school, but it seems like it would be hard to go back for a couple days and then have to come back home and learn. But this is actually could be helpful for them, right?
Yeah, I actually think that there are so many children who now realize how fantastic school is. Last year, not for the first half of last year in fall 2019, you could ask a handful of kids, "Are you excited to go back to school?" And they would have said, "I'm not really sure." Now, if you ask kids, do they want to go back to school, it might almost become completely unanimous yes, because you realize that it's that social piece. It's getting to hang out with your peers and talk and have the teacher present. And there is something about having people around you. I mean, we are naturally tribal, so I would imagine everybody wants people around them.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's exactly. I have a cousin who said that exact thing, where she's missing school.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I mean, I have 2 daughters, and both of them love school now. They want to be with their teachers. They want to be with their peers. And right now, we're going to maximize and utilize the hybrid and follow all the rules and processes that we need to get through COVID and keep it going. Yeah.
And what about for the schools that are in person and maybe have to, they get a positive case and they either have to send that class for 2 weeks home, or they have to completely shut down for 2 weeks? What are some tips to keep the learning going for those families?
This is going to be the reality of everybody who's currently doing online or hybrid, which is taking the schedule and bringing it to life. In some cases, we can support things like this with some of our on-call nannies, but it is going to be the parent taking on and looking at all of the schedule, looking at all of the things that need to be completed and owning it. And I think that as long as we look at it as a case that this is going to be 16 weeks, we have 16 weeks to try and get through this and hope that things get better. And then hopefully in 2021, when we go back to school, it can resume to in-person. But if it does end up getting pulled for 2 weeks, the family's just going to have to follow schedule, implement processes, maximize breaks, and do the best that they can to help support their child.
And so you guys are also hiring nannies during this time. Can you talk about what kind of person you look for nannies and tutors?
So for me, for the Boston office, personality is everything. I love caregivers that love to care for other people. I really want to find people that look for the good in others and always look at the glass half full, and also really enjoy working. Right now, things are crazy and they're hectic, and we like reliable, organized, fun people. And we're always hiring and we're always looking for those people. And we've got some amazing nannies and mannies that fit that bill, but we're always recruiting and we're looking for more. So if there is anybody who likes hanging out with kids and has all of those personality traits, they should definitely give us a call.
That's great. So if anyone has any last minute questions, you can comment below. You can continue commenting after this live is finished, and we will get those questions answered for you. If you have questions that also don't have to do with necessarily virtual learning, please comment those below. We are reading them. We are taking them to our reporters to get those answered. So any kind of education question, please comment below. And then just to kind of wrap this up, I mean, what are some final tips and tricks for parents right now?
Well, I think that we should all just look at this as right now we're certainly in a pandemic. We need to take everything that's going on very seriously. But as long as we implement our best practice and we're all following the CDC guidelines and living in this world of COVID, this is not forever. This is certainly something that will pass. And we can do it if we're all doing it together. And I talk to a lot of families, and it's really sad and it's really hard because lots of people are struggling. And there's a lot of emotional challenges, especially with the kids. And just remember that it's as hard as it is for us as adults, it's even harder for the kids. And we have the ability to break this down and understand it, but kids don't. And we just have to be really good role models for all of them and just also break this down. This will pass. We will get through this. But for now, we're going to do our best. And in 2021, let's hope for sunshine and rainbows.
Yes, I think we're all very ready for that. So here we've got one question before we log off here. We've got one. So people are, I mean, this is a common question here. We've got, why are Zoom rooms so hard to get into? I think that technology is honestly really difficult. I feel like there's so many options, but we're always running into technology issues. We're hearing about a lot of technology issues. Do you have any tips for people who are running into this?
Oh my gosh, the world of Zoom. I wish I invested in Zoom. It's unbelievable how a business overnight is now bombarded with huge numbers of people needing this resource to get online. I don't know why Zooms are so hard to get into, but the one thing that I did to help facilitate and support this, not only for myself, but for my children, is I downloaded the version that actually sits in my computer. So I'm not logging in and just clicking on a link. I've downloaded the application on my computer. I've downloaded it on my phone. So when it comes to me signing in, then I don't have a problem. So for your daughter, I would definitely recommend doing that to make sure that you don't have these glitches or the 15 minutes late to math.
And if kids are late, what are some ways? I mean, you know, obviously in school, at least for my school, it was a very big deal. Is it as big of a deal now with this virtual learning? Because I imagine that it's pretty difficult.
I think there's a lot of kids that are late. There's a lot of children that don't like turning their videos or their microphones on. It matters, I think, to the teachers. You know, they're giving their time and they want to have this engagement with everybody. And again, you know, as a parent, I would recommend being aware if your child is properly taking part or not taking part for the time of the teacher. But I don't know.
Technology issues can be difficult.
Yeah. Yes, indeed.
Well, if there are any other questions, I see that Rosemary has a question about restrictions. If you have any questions like that, be sure to check out MassLive.com, and we will keep updating you on anything related to the pandemic, and reach out to us if you have any specific questions that you're not seeing on MassLive.com. And again, if you have any questions relating to education, be sure to comment below. We will continue to answer those throughout the day. Thank you so much, Delilah with College Nannies, Sitters, and Tutors. It has been super, super helpful today to have you on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And I'm Heather Adams with MassLive.